Welcome to the Gospel Addict Podcast. I'm Greg Bryan.
And I'm Jim Reske.
We're gospel addicts because we believe the gospel of Jesus isn't just good news, it's the best news ever.
We're addicted to the gospel because it doesn't just start us out in the Christian life, it is the Christian life.
Join us as we look at the Bible through the lens of the gospel.
Thanks so much for listening.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into something really interesting from the Gospel Addict Podcast, specifically their series on gospel-driven sanctification.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
And one point really stood out, this idea that the gospel isn't just, step one for Christians. It is the Christian life.
Absolutely. It's the air we breathe, not just the entrance gate.
And we want to really dig into one crucial aspect of that today, the concept of sequence.
Ah, yes, sequence. It sounds simple, maybe, but getting this right, it unlocks so much.
Unlocks how? Like understanding sermons better.
Yeah, sermons, books you read, even just, reading your Bible on your own, it helps you see what's really gospel-centered versus, just another list of shoulds.
Okay, so they mentioned things like the 5 S's before, like substitution, sovereignty, things that signal gospel focus.
Right, those are helpful markers. If a message is only about try harder and doesn't touch on God's action, his sovereignty, Christ's substitution, it's probably missing the core. But sequence is like a fundamental layer underneath all that.
And it's not just academic, right? This hits us personally when we read the Bible.
Totally. Because let's be honest, our default setting is, it's self-justification, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do I need to do? How can I make God happy?
Exactly. We instinctively read it looking for our to-do list. But the big shift is realizing the Bible isn't primarily about us.
It's about Jesus.
It's about Jesus, finding him everywhere, even, deep in the Old Testament.
Okay. And the struggle isn't new. I remember them sharing that story, the woman on the plane.
Oh, yeah, the 63-year-old woman, so devout, so religious, but living in, deep fear because she wasn't sure she'd done enough. Her hope was basically in her own efforts.
And that really nails the problem, doesn't it? That uncertainty when it rests on us.
It really does.
So our mission then for this deep dive into sequence is what? To get why it's so important in the Bible.
Yeah, basically. To see why sequence matters and how it really draws a bright line between the actual gospel and, just religion.
Okay, so spell out that core difference again.
Yeah.
Religion versus gospel in terms of sequence.
Right. So religion, generally speaking, operates like this. I obey, I perform, I do the right things, therefore God accepts me. Performance first.
Okay, acceptance is the reward for obedience.
Exactly. But the gospel, it completely flips that. It says, I am already accepted fully, completely because of what Jesus did for me, therefore I obey.
Acceptance first, then obedience flows from that.
Precisely. Think about, church attendance. Is it a have to earn points with God, or a get to because you're already accepted and loved? Big difference in motivation.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, let's see this sequence thing in action. You mentioned starting with Deuteronomy, which might surprise people.
Yeah, I think it does sometimes. People think Deuteronomy, that's just laws, right?
Loads of rules.
But you got to remember the context. Where were the Israelites when Moses gave these laws again?
They'd been rescued from Egypt, right? God brought them out miraculously.
Miraculously. Decades earlier, they got the 10 Commandments back at Sinai. That's in Exodus 20. Now it's 40 years later. They're about to enter the land. And Moses is repeating the commands in Deuteronomy 5.
Okay, context set.
Yeah.
But I can still hear someone thinking, okay, rescued, yeah, but then came the rules. See? Still sounds like religion.
Fair point. But look how Moses introduces the 10 Commandments in Deuteronomy 5, verse 6. What's the very first thing he says God says?
I am the Lord your God, who rescued you from the land of Egypt, the place of your slavery.
Exactly. Notice the order. What comes first?
Rescue. I rescued you.
Yes. He doesn't say, here are the rules, follow them perfectly, then I'll rescue you.
Right. He doesn't give the commands while they're still slaves in Egypt as, conditions for freedom.
No. If he had, that would look like every other religion. Perform, meet the conditions, then maybe get the blessing. But God's way. Grace first. Rescue first. Deliverance before the demands.
Wow. Okay. So understanding Deuteronomy starts with remembering. God acted first. His grace preceded the law.
That's the absolute bedrock. Grace first, then the call to obedience as a response to that grace. It changes how you read the whole book, and really the whole Bible.
Okay, so that's Deuteronomy. Are there other places in the Old Testament where we see this pattern, grace first, then response?
Oh, definitely. Think about Ecclesiastes 9:7. It says, "Go your way, eat your food with gladness, and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for God has already approved your works."
Already approved. How does that fit?
Well, in the context of God's overall plan, for those who are his, whose sins are covered, that approval isn't something they're still trying to earn. It's based on his acceptance of them. It's a done deal because of his grace. Because they're already accepted, then they can live with joy and freedom.
So the joy and the living well are a result of the prior approval, not the cause of it.
Exactly. And then there's Isaiah chapter 6, classic passage.
Ah, the calling of Isaiah.
Right.
Yeah.
So Isaiah has this incredible, terrifying vision of God's absolute holiness, and his immediate reaction.
Woe is me. I am undone. I'm a man of unclean lips. Total awareness of his sin.
Right. He's undone. But what happens next? Does God say, okay, clean yourself up, then maybe we can talk?
No, a seraph, one of the angels, flies to him with a burning coal from the altar.
And touches his lips. And says what?
Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for.
Atonement. Cleansing.
Then, only after the sin is dealt with, after the atonement, after acceptance, then God asks, whom shall I send?
And Isaiah, now cleansed and accepted, says, here am I, send me.
See the sequence.
Ah.
Acceptance, atonement, then willing service. It wasn't duty born from fear, but a response born from grace.
Okay, that's powerful. Acceptance precedes service. It turns have to into get to.
Exactly.
Now, what about that verse in Psalms, Psalm 37.4? Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. I feel like that one gets misunderstood a lot.
Oh, absolutely. It's prime territory for misinterpretation if you ignore the sequence. What's the common, maybe surface level take on it? Well, it sounds a bit like if I just, try really hard to be happy about God, he'll give me whatever I want. Like a new car, a promotion.
Right, like a cosmic vending machine. Put in delight, get out desires.
Yeah.
But the sequence tells a different story. What's the first part?
Delight yourself in the Lord.
Right. That's the input, the focus. Finding your ultimate joy, your satisfaction, your treasure in God himself. Making him the desire of your heart.
Okay.
Then the verse says, he will give you the desires of your heart. But see, if you're truly delighting in him, what happens to your desires?
They start to change, to line up with his.
Precisely. He doesn't just grant your old, maybe selfish desires. He actually gives you new desires. His desires become your desires, the desire for his kingdom, for holiness, for his glory.
So, he gives you the desires by changing your desires as you delight in him.
You got it. It's transformation, not transaction. The changed desires are the result of delighting in him, not the reward for faking it.
That makes so much more sense. It's not about getting stuff. It's about becoming different.
Exactly. And you see this echoed elsewhere too, Romans 5.8, right? God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us.
Right. He didn't wait for us to get better. His love, his action came first.
Yeah.
While we were enemies even.
Yeah. And then Isaiah 26.12. This one's amazing. Lord, you will establish peace for us, for you have indeed done for us all our deeds.
Wait, he's done our deeds for us. What does that mean?
It means that even the good things we do accomplish, ultimately the credit goes to him working in us and through us. It reinforces that he's the primary actor, grace upon grace.
Okay, this grace first principle is really weaving through everything. Let's bring it into the New Testament narratives. Zacchaeus, Luke 19. How does sequence work there?
Oh, Zacchaeus is such a perfect picture of this. Here's this guy, chief tax collector, basically a notorious sinner, collaborating with the Romans, ripping people off, rich but likely despised.
And he wants to see Jesus, but he's short, so he climbs a tree, kind of humbling himself already, maybe.
Yeah, definitely showing eagerness. And Jesus gets to the tree, looks up, and what does he say? Does he say, Zacchaeus, if you promise to pay everyone back, I'll come to your house?
No, he just says, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. An invitation, an offer of fellowship.
Yeah.
To a known sinner.
Before any confession, before any promises of restitution, Jesus initiates. He extends grace, unasked for, unmerited. He invites himself into the sinner's home.
Okay, so grace first, acceptance first.
Right. And then what happens after experiencing this shocking, undeserved grace from Jesus?
That's when Zacchaeus stands up and says, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold.
Exactly. Radical transformation, generosity, repentance, making things right. But notice the sequence. Did his promise to give money cause Jesus to accept him?
No, it was the other way around. Jesus' acceptance, his grace shown first, is what seemed to trigger that transformation in Zacchaeus' heart.
Precisely. The changed life, the good deeds, the restitution, they were the evidence and the fruit of the grace he had already received, not the prerequisite for it. Jesus didn't wait for him to clean up his act.
So our good deeds, our generosity, they don't improve our standing with God.
Not one bit. They are the result of the perfect standing we've already been given freely through Jesus' work, his substitutionary atonement. It flows from acceptance. It doesn't earn it.
This is huge. Okay, so let's talk about Galatians. You mentioned that earlier as being key, especially for how we live after becoming Christians. Sanctification.
Absolutely. Galatians is critical because Paul is writing to believers, people who started out right, who received the Spirit by faith in the gospel.
They were getting pulled off track.
Seriously off track. Paul says in chapter 1, verse 6, he's astonished, shocked, that they're so quickly deserting the one who called them by grace and turning to a different gospel.
Which wasn't really another gospel at all, he says.
Right, and the issue there was the Judaizers, right? These teachers coming in, saying what? You need Jesus plus the Jewish law. Circumcision, food laws, stuff like that.
Exactly. Jesus got you started. But to really be right with God, to grow, to be fully pleasing to him, you need to add these works of the law. It was a Jesus plus message.
And Paul comes down on that like a ton of bricks.
He does, because he understood that it undermines the very foundation of grace. He argues vehemently that just as justification, being declared right with God, is by grace through faith alone.
So is sanctification our ongoing growth in holiness?
Yes. It's not grace to get in and then works to stay in or grow. It's grace from start to finish. Both are by grace through faith, empowered by the Spirit.
But it's so easy, isn't it, even as believers, to slip back into that works mindset. Okay, I'm saved now, I got to perform, I got to be a good Christian by my own effort.
It's the default human tendency, amplified maybe because we think we should be able to do it now that we're saved. We forget our ongoing need for grace. And the Gospel Addict folks mentioned how even some maybe misunderstandings of things like future judgment can subtly push people towards thinking their efforts are what secure their final standing or reward rather than it all flowing from grace.
Right. If the focus shifts from Christ's work to our performance, even in how we think about the future, we can subtly lose this grace-first sequence.
But Paul's argument in Galatians 3 is just so direct. He asked them, did you receive the Spirit by works of the law or by hearing with faith?
Obvious answer, faith.
Are you so foolish? Having begun by the Spirit, are you now being perfected by the flesh, by human effort?
It's like, guys, think. How did you start this journey? By God's Spirit through faith. Why on earth would you think you can finish it by reverting to your own striving and rule-keeping?
It's illogical when you put it that way.
Completely. The whole letter hammers home. Christianity is not justification by grace followed by sanctification by works. It's grace all the way down.
So the big takeaway then, for everyone listening, is that getting this sequence right, God's grace, his action, his acceptance first, leading to our response, our obedience, our transformation, it's not just like a minor theological point.
No, it's absolutely foundational. It's the engine of the gospel. Getting it wrong leads to either legalism and fear or maybe license. Thinking grace doesn't matter for how we live. Getting it right leads to freedom, gratitude, and genuine Spirit-empowered change.
And this ties into other things too, right? Like they mentioned surrender.
Yeah, because our desire to control things, to earn our way, to rely on our own efforts, that's the opposite of surrendering to God's grace and letting him work. Understanding sequence helps us let go of the controls.
Trusting what he's already done.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to that great closing thought they shared.
Oh yeah, that's worth repeating. On your worst days, you're never beyond the reach of God's grace.
And on your best days, you're never beyond the need of God's grace.
That keeps us humble and keeps us hopeful. It levels the playing field at the foot of the cross.
Absolutely. Such a crucial truth to hang on to.
For sure. And look, if this sparks more questions for anyone listening about sequence or anything else, feel free to reach out. We love digging into this stuff.
Definitely. Well, thanks for unpacking that with us today. Join us next time as we take another deep dive, hopefully shedding more light on the richness of the gospel for you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Gospel Addict Podcast. Feel free to contact us via email at gospeladdictpodcast@gmail.com.
Stay tuned for our next episode, and remember, on your worst days, you're never beyond the reach of God's grace, and on your best days, you're never beyond the need of God's grace.
See you next time.